Hello and welcome everybody. This is Yanaman bringing you another Fleet Ops Audio commentary. I have with me today as my guest commentator Dominus Noctis. If you would say hi.
Sure, hello there.
Alright folks, so we got a 2v2 on little universe, and I'll go ahead and start off with the top team. The top team as the Blue Borg, this is Ugly the Great. He is now hence known as Ugly for the rest of the match. And his teammate as the Green Romulans, this here is Dragonfire. Take it away and tell us what's going on the bottom.
So on the bottom left, we have Red Mr. Tiger, and he is a Martok. On the bottom left, bottom right, we have Mr. Takraja and he has 23 down.
Alright, so...
And I just wanted to clarify on the top, we have our Borgie opponent here is an Optimize. And our Romulan opponent on the top is Helev.
Circus, yes. So yeah.
So do you want to talk about what's going on the top?
So I'm seeing up here the Borg, he's going after his Tritanium, he's going after his Dilithium, he's putting up a standard conduction matrix. I would expect a 2-cube, 3-probe, or something to that effect play out of this guy. And at this point, it's a little too early to tell. As
I think that's pretty reasonable because he's got 4 miners starting up, if you notice, and if you do a 3 miner or 2 miner, you usually are going for a rush.
Right, so he's going to play a. It's not a conservative. It's a straightforward. It's not enough. He's not playing an offensive build yet, and time will tell whether or not he actually puts those probes, or if he bypasses probes.
And so our Romulan player right here seems to be going into a 2-Ren build, and he's probably going to move into a Leia Vol or Griffin right away after doing that, since he's already putting up his first research station.
Unless he is going for phaser plates, yes?
Yep, that could be 2. I'm just surprised because he's only putting up 2 Riens in the Star Yard. So usually, since he's not queuing up a bunch of them, that will mean that he's probably going to do something else almost immediately. The 2 Klingon builders down here have been building out Kabej. Out of each one has 1 central facility. And 23 down is putting up a battle yard at his expansion.
And it looks like, on the other hand, they're both expanding. The other guy is not putting up any battle. Now, so in this map, 23's battle yard is actually going to get his expansion. Actually works in his favor if he's going counterclockwise, as he is now closer to his enemy. And I always find that in many like other board games, you get the position that you take out of the middle is better than position you take out of the sides. So an expansion towards your enemy is, with a battle yard, is better, for lack of a better word.
So I want to call into concern right here 2 things. One is that Mr. Borgie has lost his scout now, and to transportation, and also Tiger is building his field research, so he might move into Cavorts.
It's true, and down here we do see lots and lots of Riens. He is continuing to produce Riens up here. And I think in one of these, let's see, who's this? Dragonfire's playstyle is that he's just not queuing up, because one of the other things is if you queue up everything, you're basically giving out your hand.
Exactly, which is something I made a mistake on earlier.
Of course, I've seen people where they'll queue up everything to give away that hand, but really what they don't, they're just messing with your mind, right? They know you're watching, they queue it up, and then at the last second they just tear it all down, and it's a minute's worth of confusion, but sometimes that minute is just all you need.
So Ugly the Great has now gone into 2 resource assimilators, and he's building his first dodecahedron. At the same time, 23 down is building a Caduge, or trying to. He doesn't have the resources at the moment.
So why is he building a Caduge? It's like, what is that?
Well, A Cartouche is pretty powerful. It has Imperial Stance, which can be activated all the time unless you have an energy draining weapon that's hitting it. And that's a +3 stats across the board. Very powerful. You notice he started off with his first refinery at the Tritanium moon, so he's obviously expecting to consume a lot of Tritanium.
And so the Klingons, so 23 having lost his scout as well. I love when Romulan players do this. They take their first scout, or they take a scout and they refit it right away, knowing that the cloakers are just sitting there.
Exactly, and it's a little bit of a gamble here because he doesn't have another scout on the board. So he won't know what's happening to 23 down or to Tiger, but so he can only guess. So he spent quite a bit of money to capture that scout, which is nice because then that means 23 down has no eyes, but at the same time he has no eyes down there either.
I question why he didn't take his cloaked Rians and put them in a little better position, but let me rephrase that. It's not exactly a better or worse position. I think he's just trying to defend against raids. He's playing defensively because, as you were saying, he didn't have eyes on the board. He wanted to capture that scout, and then he's now going to reassess and then make some decisions based on that.
And if you notice, he's moving Scout around quite a bit, so he's trying to decloak something, trying to make the Klingon player a little bit more wary about attacking. So he's got his 3 Rians in the middle because it's equidistant from both of his mining, so that way he can get to any place quicker, though he won't be able to decloak on anybody right away.
Yep.
So Borgi is continuing to make dodecahedrons. This is his second one coming on the board, and he has no probes out, so he's going to be very unit deficient. Both Klingon players have put up battle yards, so we can expect either Sang or Vorcha to come out from Tiger eventually.
So let's see.
And 23 down has built a second scout now, so to replace his first one.
So Tiger looks like he wants to go raid up here on Dragonfire. But I'm not counting enough ships to really make a difference. I see 2, unless this is a distraction or just he's getting in placement and using this as sort of a virtual scout.
I think that they don't think that Ugly the Great is a very in a strong position because he's got so few units and he's being very defensive with them. So I'm assuming that Tiger just wants to raid a little bit with the Cabbage because he'll expect that they can get out. However, 4 Rien is good enough to probably get 1 Cabbage before it can cloak out.
And we will get to test that theory because 2 versus 4, and here it goes.
So one really nasty thing you can do against a player who uses Cloak and when they're not using very many ships is if you're paying attention, you can use one of your stations to transport aboard an enemy ship. And because there's so few ships, you won't really be able to do damage to that station. So he's lost 1 Cabbage.
Yep. So, and here comes the Cloak Scout, just in the.
So 23 downs, Cartouche has come out.
So how is that Cartouche going to fare against Rians?
It'll do pretty well. It's medium size, so it will reduce the pulse damage, and there's nothing else on the board that can really help against it. I guess Dragonfire has decided he's now going to queue up only Rians.
Let's see, how is he doing as far as money? He's doing pretty well in the dilithium.
So Tiger has his Cabbage special now, and so he's going to have a homing torpedo. There are 3 dodecahedrons heading down.
And they are all double intercept.
Yep. So a lot of damage coming from their special.
And the disable as well.
Yep. 23 down has started on Vorcha production. And at the same time, Tiger is building Sang. And he's going to move into Vorcha as well because he's just started to put up another yard, his armory.
So one of the things that I didn't comment on earlier is Dragonfire was using his refit to detect scouts in his teammate's base, and I thought that was actually a really good play. And he's actually doing it again, where he has now found this cloaked scout that was tailing the Borg.
Yeah,
So
very
just a
good.
call out for good team play. And one of the other things about if you're going to do scouting tactics like this, the Borg ships make great scouting follow targets. And wow, he caught some of the cloaked ones
Yep.
out in the base. But anyways, what I was saying is you're invariably going to have your Borg ships being tailed by a cloaked scout. So it's a good, you kind of almost know that they're going to be there.
So one thing I want to criticize here is that he immediately used the dodecahedron special next to the yards and the miners, and that means really that he's going to do a large amount of damage, or not very much damage, to anything in particular, because he can't control where that damage is going, and most of it's going to hit the stations or the miners and not really do particular damage to the actual military units.
Right, and it also, as they're fighting around the station, they have an easier time of getting into the repair yard.
Yep.
So having backed off a little bit actually helps them here. So they'll get the last couple of seconds to beat on the ships as they're retreating.
Yeah, and this seems to be not going very well. He's lost 2 cabbage almost immediately. There seems to be maybe some control problems, and there's no allied repair research. So
And
all
there's
these
going up.
ships are just going to be dying.
Yup.
And in the meantime, if we notice, Dragonfire has gone for his upgrade center, and he's researching the disruptor refit for his Ran.
How well do you think that is actually going to fare? Because if he takes his existing, all of his Rians, then he's going to lose his phase plates.
Yep. So the phase plates are good because they do reduce a lot of damage from the medium range, and the disruptor Rans actually happen to be weaker against medium range units. So this won't play so well against the Vorcha and his Caduge and the Cabbage, but most of the Cabbage are already dead, so it might play out pretty well actually.
But what sort of unit composition would you? What about the Sang? So the Klingons are trying to move into at least a little bit of other higher tier units like the Sang.
Right.
My concern as a player would be, are my Rians going to die so fast that they're not even going to have a chance to use their offensive capabilities?
Exactly. Yeah, they might not do so well. It might be good to keep 1 or 2 Rans as still a normal default Ran. That way you have phase plates to tank. So if we notice now, 23 Down has sent his lone Vorcha up to the expansion of Dragonfire, and it's now taking out some of the miners.
That'll be nice, as it gives and allows him to, if he can actually get some kills, get a little bit of rank up on his guy, but...
Right.
And the miners are far enough away from a repair yard that they're not actually going to get away, so...
So Ugly the Great is building 2, he's built 2 more dodecahedrons, same configuration as before, so that gives him 5 now that are all going to be heading toward each other. And I think that they'll push towards 23 Down now.
Oddly enough, well, I would think that would be the right move to do, but it's almost like they want to go and, like, they're moving up.
Right.
Which,
Well, 23 Down is about to lose his Vorcha now, so it's got, it's going to be captured pretty much. Or not. He actually captured the scout and managed to get it away, so his Vorcha survives with just barely any health.
that's awesome. 23 is
Yeah,
a
very impressive.
wily SOB. He is still gonna. Well, luckily the scout has no engines, and so he can get away.
Yep, and so now we watch the Vorcha take out these Ren. So we should point out that Vorcha actually do 10% less damage to long-range units, and both the dodecahedron and the Rens are both long-range. So even though we'll be able to stay in there because it's pretty strong offensive and defensive capabilities, it's really not going to do extra damage or have any counter of any sort like that. And if we look down at Tiger's base, he's actually building an Imperial yard, so he might be trying to go for Negvars since he's also got an ordnance depot up.
So at this point, why would he be going for Negvars? I mean, what's he playing towards there? They've got
Well,
some
we've got a
weaknesses.
lot of long-range units, and so I think that he wants to try to counter that. At this point, I'm not sure if that's going to work because there are so many units on the board on the top side, and they're going to be able to crush these relatively small fleets.
I'm taking stock of 23's. His economy's well suffering a big hit, but he's okay for a little bit. So at this point, are they dead? Because it looks almost like they're dead, unless they can pull out a couple
Yes.
more.
I would have thought the previous battle at Tiger's expansion was quite painful for both 23 and Tiger. They both lost about 80% of their fleet, and they didn't incur any significant losses on their opponents. So quite difficult to come back from that. And now there's a decloak scout coming down from Dragonfire, and this will make life very difficult even if 23 down does start to cloak out now.
But do you really feel that he's using the cloak out much here? Because really all he's doing is he's cycling out. He's less than 2 seconds away from his repair yard. Cloaking out's not going to give him anything. It just actually Dragonfire is actually being smart. He's not keeping a scout in the fray. He's keeping it away because it would be a prime target.
I think at this point in time, 23 down has one Vorcha and one Kabej at his main base. I'm not sure if he's going to actually try to send them up or not, or just cloak and try to do some harassment behind the scenes because his expansion is pretty much lost.
Yeah, the only thing he's doing right now is biding time. He can't win this.
And so right now we notice that Imperial research is going up at Tiger's base, and he's started his first Negvar.
So from it seems like he's not playing towards helping out immediately when his teammate is about to fall over. It's almost like they've given up and they had a set, or at least Tiger had a set plan in his head and just didn't adapt to what was coming out on the board. Would you have recommended Negvars if you're seeing this?
At this point, I would have recommended to stay with lower tier units. That way you can pump out a lot of them and just start harassing, because right now there's no point to engage this fleet. The dodecahedrons aren't going to be able to destroy those bases. The Wrens, yes, they will be able to, but it keeps them there and you know where they are. So you could go out and raid and get some level ups and come back around maybe later. At this point, he's just losing unit one by one units, and they're not gonna. It's gonna give him level ups essentially.
Sure, and that's like almost the one thing that you should almost never, ever do is just piecemeal your units.
Right. So one of the things that should be so Ugly the Great has put out a sphere now, and the thing that I wanted to comment on is that Ugly keeps expanding. So this is very powerful. He's got a lot of resources up. He's got two full expansions, or one full expansion and a half another expansion. And so he's going to get a lot of resources very quickly. He's even putting up a transmission matrix now.
Wow, yeah, he's going to be rolling in the dough, and he's going to have whatever ship production he wants based off of those resources.
Right. So the first Negvar is engaging the Talon here, but it's going to get totally creamed by all these Irans if it can't get in the yard fast enough. Oh, so we see some Vortos being built, so I'm thinking that they want to use Ion Storm to level the playing field. It won't do much to Borg, but it will do a lot to those small-sized Disruptorans since they don't have as much health.
Yep. The Psy Storm of Fleet Ops.
Yeah.
That's kind of a
game-winning fleet right here, so that Vortos better win something.
Right.
Another thing that we should comment on is that 23 down is putting out miners again and refilling his expansion. So this is very good. A lot of players forget to do this, and therefore they just end up sitting on no resources and they wonder why.
So one of the things that I would also comment on is when you're cycling your ships to your repair yard, you can keep the one in there by firing a few ships on it, and then you can use the rest of your ships to take out the tail of the repair yard.
Exactly. Very wise decision. It's good to get rid of those few but strong units, because then the player actually has to manually hit stop, and then at that point they're sitting with less than full health ship, and you can just kill it at the end of the repair yard.
Yep. And then, as these guys were realizing that they were not getting kills off this repair yard, basically wasting damage, wasting their time, they at least turned around and started whacking other ships that weren't making its way.
So Borg is taking a little bit of damage from that. You can see his dodecahedrons are getting fairly beat up by these Negvars.
And let's take a look at these. Are these... Yep, all of them are Disruptorians.
So right now, Dragonfire had a Talon sitting at his main base, just pinging, and 23 downs, Vorcha happened to fly through it and get pretty severely mauled. And you see a Vortos with Cloak moving out.
And nice. So big gambit here, but he is sitting... It's really big gamble. Going up high tech to... like you were saying, not getting any ships out on the board.
So Dragonfire is doing the smart thing, and he's going to take out the expansion. So they've split up their fleets, which is a very good thing if you're expecting to just take out as much as possible at one time. Because with such small fleets, neither 23 down nor Tiger can afford to split their fleets, so they can only engage one opponent at a time.
And with these Negvars, you know exactly where they are, so...
Yep. So, what do you think about neither Tiger nor 23 down popping any of their top May?
I think that's just giving free experience with no fight back, especially if they ended up dead.
Now it seems that Tiger is decommissioning his expansion. 23 down, in the meantime, has actually put up a scout station at his expansion, so he's going to hopefully catch any Romulan players that are decloaking or cloaking out.
And he is just... and that other scout is sitting right on the outside of that range.
So one thing to bring up here is that we've got two Bortos sitting in Tiger's base, and they're not moving out. And so these are kind of the ultimate, basically Romulan killers, since Romulan raiders have such weak defensive values. They're just going to be killed by one or two Bortos pretty easily. So what do you think? Do you think he should send them out now, or do you think he should keep them to take out those Rian?
He needs to... well, let's see, where's he going to get his bang for his buck? I think what he is trying to do is he wants to get a hold of those Rians, because that's what is providing a lot of firepower on the top team, but he just doesn't know where they're at because they are cloaked. Either that or he's waiting for that third one, which he is not getting.
In the middle of the field right now, we just had a Talon that was sitting in the middle of nowhere, and very well, Dragonfire had kept his fleet around it, cloaked. So that's a typical thing that most people do, is they don't like to keep their Talons separate from their fleets, because a Talon is relatively expensive, and it's hard to keep it away. So by decloaking on that Talon, he really exposed himself to being massacred by a large fleet.
Can you say fishing?
So Borgie is now building his second sphere, and he's got a
third, actually,
basically 80% damage, or 10% damage to Dodecahedron at his base. He could send it back down again.
At this point, I would just GG, because there's just an overwhelming fleet from the top team. Get out,
I would
fight
be very
another
surprised
game.
if any of them could come back from this.
Yes.
The two Bortus are coming around, but this is going to be, I think, a more of a suicide attack.
At this point, I think they just should use the Bortas.
Yep.
It's like,
Sitting
okay,
around with ships is never a good idea, and since you know exactly where Borg's ships are, Mr. Ugly the Great, you could send those Negvars around. You don't have to wait for Borg and Romulan to decloak on something or to attack something. You can go and take the fight to the enemy since you know where Borg is.
yes. And always taking a little bit of fight back to the enemy, especially with those small ships that these guys are lacking. If you know where those fleets are, put some of them in their mining, and at least it will have them a draw for... Oh, and there it is.
Yep.
And they're not going to get any of them.
Yeah, that... There's probably a little bit of lag there, so he didn't expect that the Romulans would head downward.
Yes.
That was too bad. The dodecahedrons took quite a bit of damage. About 50% of their hull is missing, but there's no way that that sacrifice was worth it now. If you notice, the Rians took huge amounts of damage even for being there just for a few seconds. So if he had placed that Vortos just a bit lower, it would have been quite powerful.
Yep. However, at this time, now I'm expecting the GG. And these Negvars may actually get a Dode kill.
Yeah?
If they can not lose their... If the Negas cannot lose.
Yeah, those spheres are all 1' spheres, I think. 1' 3 regen spheres, so they're tanks, but they're not doing a heavy amount of damage to the Negvars. This is the kind of the victory fleet now moving around. It's really too bad about those Bortos. So 23 down is actually building onto his yard, and he's going to go for Vex, for Veklarag.
And I would expect engine disabler somewhere around here.
Oh yeah, probably.
23 is not, he's just not giving up. He's...
Oh no, he's building it because he wants allied repair, so maybe no Vex at all.
But is... okay, yeah.
Very interesting. They're continuing to play, even though it's pretty much very severe odds of them winning. But it's good team play, and it's good that they're continuing. Unfortunately, neither of them can really do anything at this point. I mean, they've got each one full mining, but no construction.
And that's about to change here very shortly. As this victory fleet does a victory dance on their main.
Yeah. They're going to take out all the stuff far away from the starbase. At this point, Ugly the Great is just continuing to build spheres, which is a little odd because he could build a DPS diamond or even a DPS sphere instead of building all these 3 regen spheres.
And there's the GG.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Dom. And
well, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. So, if y'all have any questions, leave comments, whatnot. We all love the feedback. So, see you on the flip side.